As shootings spike in Chicago, one local politician is basically attempting to cover it up by making it harder for local residents to get crime alerts. Instead of actually addressing the spike in shootings, she's just trying to hide the fact that she's not doing her job by hiding the facts from her constituents. So last weekend basically rivaled Memorial Day weekend in the number of shootings that occurred, and Memorial Day weekend was pretty bad. So according to the Chicago Sun-Times, 10 people were killed and at least 34 were injured in shootings citywide over the weekend, making the third weekend in a row in which more than 30 people were shot. A lot of these people who are getting shot are also incredibly young. For instance, 2 teens and a 12-year-old boy were wounded in a pair of shootings Friday night in the Douglas neighborhood. A 16-year-old boy was standing in a fast food restaurant parking lot just before 10:15 p.m. when someone opened fire, police said. Now, the 16-year-old is still alive, luckily remains in critical condition, and I'm hoping that he makes a speedy recovery. But no arrests have been made, which is typically the case. And this is happening weekend after weekend after weekend. The number of victims approached the number who were shot over the long Memorial Day weekend, when at least 42 people were shot between 5 p.m. Friday and 5 a.m. Tuesday. 9 people were killed that holiday weekend. And shootings have been an ongoing problem in Chicago. I mean, obviously, it's a problem all across the country, especially in major cities. But it seems to be more pronounced in Chicago. And unfortunately, rather than do something about it, an alderwoman in the city named Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth would basically rather just stop sharing the crime alerts. So Northside Alderman Hoppenworth, who's in the 48th ward, defended her decision to stop posting crime alerts on social media and automatically sending those alerts to all residents who sign up for her emails, even as shootings, robberies, and criminal sexual assaults in her ward skyrocket.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you.
She said that the alerts about violent crime will go only to those who opt in, who choose to receive them. And she said that the decision was based not only on community input. I doubt that. I've watched many members of that community say that they're upset about this, but nonetheless, but informed by research that demonstrates how over-reporting of crime leads to an inaccurate public perception about crime rates and negatively impacts our most marginalized and underserved neighbors. Well, those marginalized and underserved neighbors are the individuals who are the victims of these crimes. And how are you gonna sit there and argue that, oh, this is giving a false impression of public safety when public safety is an issue in your ward? So for instance, shootings in the 48th ward have reached a 9-year high. Robberies are up 78% over last year, and criminal sexual assaults have spiked to levels not seen in the ward since 2012. And that's based on reporting from the Chicago Sun-Times. So I don't understand how she's justifying this, because to me, it comes across as I am failing at my job. And so I would rather hide that from my constituents and not suffer the political ramifications. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What do you think, Was?
I don't see how you can see what's happening in Chicago as anything but a state level, governmental level, policy level failure. That's just the bottom line, right? A lot of people don't know this, but when they tore down them projects, Cabrini Green and a couple of those other projects, they just pushed those people into neighborhoods that were, largely just working class Black neighborhoods. And then, the problem basically grew. They thought that they were sort of getting rid of a problem that they saw as a blighted situation. in those projects on the South Side, and they actually exacerbated it by pushing those people into different neighborhoods, and they actually grew the problem. If you talk to anybody who's from the South Side of Chicago or from the West Side of Chicago, which is where all of the violence is basically concentrated, it's kind of funny hearing a North Side politician making these distinctions, because again, this is somebody who doesn't actually have to live with these consequences. It makes sense when you consider that this is an elected official who these problems are failures made by elected officials, right? And I think some of the problem with Chicago is that places like Fox News or Breitbart and all of these other places sort of made Chicago a euphemism for black criminality and justifiable racism. And I think people who consider themselves to be progressive or liberal or on the left instinctively started to take like any mention of Chicago as in lockstep with our ideological enemies, which I think is a mistake in terms of crafting your own politics, just being in opposition to whatever a set of people are saying, no matter what it is. Because the bottom line is the people who suffer the most from the problems of Chicago are their most vulnerable citizens. And those are the people who we should be concentrating most of our resources into helping. I just don't see how brushing this thing under the rug, sort of literally burying your head in the sand, is going to improve the conditions for the people that are on the ground there in the South Side and West Side of Chicago.
Yeah, listen, if people are so smooth-brained that they can't understand the difference of intentions, right? So on one hand, yes, there are members of the right who use the black on black trope in order to justify things like police brutality, what have you. There are nefarious intentions behind that. There's an agenda, so I understand that what it does is any mention from a progressive about this very real problem, it's gonna trigger a part of your brain that's gonna make you think, oh, this person's engaging in the same nefarious rhetoric or the nefarious agenda. But how about just for a second, consider the difference, the distinction between a progressive or someone on the left, broadly speaking, who is actually genuinely concerned about this issue due to the number of victims that arise as a result of doing absolutely nothing about it, by just ignoring it and pretending like it doesn't exist. It does exist. It is a problem that gets worse, that has been getting worse weekend by weekend, at least this year in Chicago. And there needs to be solutions. Just hiding the statistics from the general public and then gaslighting them. Like if I hear another person in my ear about like, oh, it's a false impression, it's a false perception. I'm a smug lib who lives in like a super wealthy part of town and doesn't have to deal with shootings every single weekend, but I'm a good person. So I'm just gonna brush off people who are concerned about these issues in these parts of town by saying that they have a false perception of rising crime, even though the statistics are right there in front of our faces, right there in front of our faces. I'm not making them up. I don't know, is the Chicago Sun-Times a far-right rag, or is it a journalistic institution that is reporting about what's happening on the ground in Chicago?
By the way, let's be real. If in those neighborhoods they had some like neighbors who were playing music too loud for way too long,
yes,
or something innocuous like that, these people would be up in arms. They'd be calling every single politician they could get their hands on and saying, this is a major problem. This is a failure of the state, literally. They would be like, the cops need to be involved. We need to get some ordinances in. Like they would literally consider it to be a state failure, right? Like I'm talking about some of the most innocuous things possible that these people tend to complain about. So they hear that, they'd be like, oh, the problem is overstated. Of course they're gonna say that because it just makes them feel bad just to hear about it. You could imagine what they'd be doing if they actually had to live through some of these travails.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.